1. The Passenger Who Never Existed. It was a cold, misty night in late November when Armin, a tired Uber driver from Karachi, received his last ride request of the day. The streets were unusually empty, and the air carried that strange stillness that comes just before something unsettling happens. He was exhausted, ready to head home after 10 long hours behind the wheel, but the app pinged, a new passenger waiting near the old Clifton graveyard. "Just this one last ride," he muttered to himself, rubbing his eyes and pressing accept. The name on the screen read Sadia, and she had requested a drop-off to a small residential area not too far from Defense. As he drove toward the pickup point, the fog thickened, blurring streetlights into ghostly halos. The hum of his car engine was the only sound breaking the heavy silence. When he reached the location, he saw no one there. He looked around, checked the mirror, even rolled down his window to call out, "Sadia, are you here?" For a few seconds there was nothing but the faint rustle of wind through dry leaves. Then from the dim corner near the graveyard gate, a woman stepped forward, tall, draped in a black shawl that covered most of her face. Her movements were slow, almost too graceful, and when she opened the car door, a soft but icy wind seemed to rush inside. She didn't speak as she got in, just nodded once when Armin asked if she was Sadia. Her perfume, old, floral, and strangely nostalgic, filled the car. It reminded him of something he couldn't place. Something from childhood, perhaps, like his grandmother's wooden chest where she kept her old clothes scented with rosewater. As they drove off, the atmosphere in the car grew heavier. The woman sat silently in the back seat, her head slightly tilted, staring out the window into the fog. The GPS showed a 20-minute drive, but after 5 minutes, Armin began to feel uneasy. The rearview mirror seemed to play tricks on his eyes. Sometimes he could see her reflection clearly, and sometimes in the corner of his eye, it looked like the seat was empty. He blinked hard, shaking his head. "You're just tired," he whispered. He tried starting small talk to break the tension. "It's a cold night, isn't it?" he said, forcing a laugh. The woman didn't reply. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, drive faster." Her tone sent chills through him, not because it was loud or angry, but because it carried a sorrow that seemed to sink into the air itself. He pressed the accelerator, the car slicing through fog and empty streets. The navigation arrow on his screen flickered once, then froze, showing they were driving in circles. "That's strange," he muttered, tapping the screen. "The map's acting weird tonight." Then, from the back seat, she spoke again, this time more clearly. "Don't worry. We're almost there." He didn't remember telling her the destination, and when he glanced at the mirror, she was looking right at him now, her eyes dark and expressionless. "You know where we're going?" he asked cautiously. No answer. Just that eerie half-smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Something deep inside him screamed to end the ride, to stop the car. But curiosity held him frozen. The next turn took them into a narrow, deserted street lined with old colonial houses, half crumbling, half standing like shadows of the past. The fog thickened until even the headlights struggled to cut through it. Then she said softly, "Stop here." He slowed the car, trying to spot any sign of a house or gate, but there was nothing, just walls covered in vines and a locked iron gate that looked like it hadn't opened in years. He hesitated. "Are you sure?" "There's nothing here." Her silence was her answer. He turned around and the back seat was empty. The shawl she'd worn was lying neatly folded where she had sat. His heart thudded violently in his chest as he blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. "What the?" he whispered, spinning around again to check the street, but there was no one outside, just fog and stillness. Panic surged through him. He quickly ended the ride, locked the doors, and sped off, hands trembling on the steering wheel. His eyes darted to the rearview mirror every few seconds, expecting to see her sitting there again. When he finally reached the main road, he pulled over near a tea stall, breathing heavily. The shopkeeper looked at him, concerned. "You look pale, Bhai. Everything okay?" Armin nodded, gulping down air. "Yeah, just tired." He turned to glance at the back seat one more time and froze. There in the corner of the seat was a faint, wet handprint. It hadn't been raining. His heart almost stopped. He jumped out of the car and stood there shaking, staring through the window. The print was still there, fading slowly as if the moisture was evaporating. The shopkeeper walked over. "What's wrong?" he asked again. Armin forced a weak smile. "Nothing. Just thought I saw something." He didn't mention the passenger, didn't mention her voice, her perfume, or the way she had vanished. That night he drove straight home, locked his car, and couldn't sleep till dawn. The next day, still disturbed, he checked his Uber history. The ride was there, but the passenger name field was blank. No fare, no record, just an empty trip log showing the route ending at the old Clifton graveyard. He stared at it for a long time, unable to believe what he was seeing. Out of fear and disbelief, he contacted Uber support. After a few hours, he received a generic email saying there was no such user registered with that name, and the system could not locate any record of the completed trip. Armin stopped driving nights after that. Months passed, but the memory refused to fade. Every time he passed near that area, his chest tightened. And one evening, while waiting at a red light, his car's Bluetooth system automatically connected, and a soft female voice whispered from the speaker, "Thank you for the ride." His phone showed no incoming call, no app notification, nothing. Just the sound of that same perfume lingering faintly in the car like a ghostly reminder. Some say Armin's mind was just exhausted, that the long hours had blurred reality and imagination. But those who know him, the ones who've seen him since that night, say he's never been the same. He still drives during the day, avoiding night shifts completely. Yet sometimes when fog settles over the streets of Karachi and silence stretches thin, he swears he can still smell that rose-scented perfume, faintly from the back seat, right before the air turns cold, and his Uber app pings with a new request from someone named Sadia. 2. The ride that ended in silence. It was around 1:30 in the morning when Bilal, an Uber driver from Lahore, received a ride request that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He'd just finished dropping off a passenger near Gulberg and was planning to head home. The night was quiet, almost too quiet, with the kind of still air that makes every small sound feel louder than it should. He leaned back in his seat, yawned, and was about to go offline when his phone pinged. A new ride. The pickup was near an old, partially abandoned hospital on Firozapur Road, and though his gut told him to ignore it, he sighed and tapped, "Accept." "It's just one more ride," he mumbled, convincing himself. "One more and I'm done." As he drove closer to the hospital, the streetlights started flickering, and the darkness between them seemed to stretch longer than usual. The hospital stood like a massive shadow in the fog, its broken windows reflecting faint glimmers of light. When he stopped at the pickup point, there was no one in sight. He checked the app again. The passenger's name was Noman, and the destination was about 15 minutes away, somewhere near the outskirts of Model Town. Bilal honked once, waited, and was about to cancel when a man suddenly appeared from behind the hospital gate. He was tall, wearing a black coat, his face partly hidden by the hood. Without saying a word, the man opened the back door and got in. The air instantly felt heavier, and a faint smell of antiseptic mixed with something metallic, like dried blood, filled the car. Bilal tried to make small talk, asking if the man worked at the hospital, but the passenger didn't answer. He just murmured, "Please drive." His voice was deep but emotionless, like someone speaking from far away. Uneasy but polite, Bilal nodded and began driving. The first few minutes passed in silence. The road was empty, except for the occasional stray dog crossing under the dim streetlights. The man sat perfectly still, his hands clasped together, his head slightly bowed. Bilal glanced in the rearview mirror a few times, but the man's face was barely visible under the hood. When he finally asked, "Sir, is the AC okay?" the man replied softly, "It's fine. I like it cold." There was something about the way he said it, slow, deliberate, almost detached, that made Bilal's stomach twist. He reached for the radio to break the silence, but the moment he turned it on, all he got was static. Not music, not talk, just white noise crackling like a whispering voice. "Strange," he muttered, turning it off. As they drove deeper into the city, Bilal noticed something odd. The GPS wasn't showing any movement. The blue dot that usually followed their route was frozen in place. He checked his internet, restarted the app, but it didn't change. "That's weird," he said nervously. The GPS stopped. The passenger didn't respond. Bilal looked up in the mirror again, and for the briefest second he thought the back seat was empty. His heart skipped a beat. He blinked hard, looked again, and the man was there, sitting exactly as before, head bowed, motionless. Bilal's hands tightened on the wheel. The silence felt alive now, pressing against his ears. Then from the back the man suddenly asked, "Do you believe in second chances?" His voice was calm, almost gentle, but the question sent a shiver down Bilal's spine. I guess, Bilal said, forcing a weak laugh. Everyone deserves one, right? The man nodded slowly. That's what I thought too, he murmured almost to himself. Until I never got mine. A cold wave of fear rushed through Bilal. He wanted to ask what the man meant, but something in his tone told him not to. A few minutes later, the man said quietly, "You can stop here." They were in the middle of nowhere. An empty street surrounded by trees and old buildings. No houses, no lights, just darkness stretching in every direction. "Are you sure, sir?" Bilal asked, glancing around. "There's nothing here." The man smiled faintly, the first expression he'd made the whole ride. "There used to be," he said, "before they tore it down." Slowly he reached into his coat pocket and Bilal's heart started racing. But instead of a weapon, the man pulled out a small folded photograph. He looked at it for a moment, then whispered, "I used to live right here." He handed the photo forward, his hand trembling slightly. Bilal took it hesitantly. It was an old, faded picture of a family. A man, a woman, and a little boy standing in front of what looked like the same spot they were parked at now. The house in the photo was bright and beautiful, but in front of them now was nothing but an empty lot filled with broken bricks. "I'm sorry," Bilal said softly, unsure why. The man nodded once. "They said it was an accident, but it wasn't." His voice grew distant, as if he was drifting somewhere far away. "I came home late one night, just like you, and everything was gone. Fire took them all. My wife, my son, everything." Bilal felt his throat tighten. "That's terrible," he managed to say. The man leaned forward slightly, and for the first time Bilal saw his eyes, dark, sunken, filled with pain. "Tell me, driver," he said quietly, "what would you do if your home burned and nobody even remembered your name?" Bilal didn't know how to answer. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He could feel the man's breath, cold, too cold, murmur against his neck. Then just as suddenly the man leaned back again and said, "It doesn't matter now. They remember me tonight." The air in the car grew icy. Bilal's breath fogged up in front of him. The windows began to mist, and when he tried to wipe them with a tissue, the fog spread faster from the inside. He turned to ask if everything was all right, but the back seat was empty. The door hadn't opened. There was no sound, no movement, just emptiness. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it echoing in his ears. "Sir?" he whispered, voice trembling. No answer. The air still smelled faintly of antiseptic and smoke. His phone buzzed suddenly, word the Uber app asking him to rate the passenger. He froze. The name on the screen was gone, replaced with blank space, but the timestamp showed the ride had ended exactly 1 minute ago. His hands shook as he looked up again. The photo the man had handed him was still lying on the passenger seat. He picked it up with trembling fingers, and to his horror, the image had changed. The same house was there, but now it was burnt to the ground, black smoke rising into the night sky and the family in the picture. They were gone, just empty silhouettes where they used to stand. He dropped the photo instantly, his skin crawling. Without thinking, he slammed his foot on the accelerator and sped out of that place, heart racing, headlights cutting through the fog. When he finally reached a populated road, he pulled over and got out, gasping for air. A nearby security guard approached him, asking if he was all right. Bilal could barely speak. He just pointed to the photo still lying inside the car. The guard picked it up, frowned, and said, "There's nothing on it. It's just blank paper." Bilal's mouth went dry. "No, there was a picture." "I swear." The guard shook his head, handed it back, and walked away muttering. Bilal stared at the paper again, and it was indeed blank. Not even a mark. That night he didn't go home. He parked at a mosque, performed ablution, and prayed until dawn, his mind spinning with questions that had no answers. The next morning, when he checked his trip history, the ride wasn't there. The log jumped from his previous drop-off directly to an empty time slot. Uber support claimed there was no record of any ride from that location or at that time. He even went back a few days later to the same spot in daylight and found a small, rusted sign hidden in the overgrown weeds that read, "In loving memory of Noman and family, burned in this house fire 2005. His blood ran cold. It was the same name as the passenger, the same place, the same story. Since that night, Bilal never accepted late-night rides again. And sometimes when he drives past the outskirts of Model Town on a foggy night, his app suddenly glitches, showing a new request from Noman. He doesn't touch it. He doesn't even look at it for long, because every time he does, for just a second, the temperature drops, his windshield fogs up, and from the back seat he swears he can hear a quiet voice whisper, "Please drive." Tie the woman in the rearview mirror. It was a stormy night in Islamabad when Saad, an Uber driver known for his calm and polite nature, found himself driving through the rain-soaked streets, headlights slicing through sheets of water pouring from the sky. He'd been driving since the evening rush hour, ferrying passengers from F10 to Blue Area, and now he was tired, eager to head home. But just as he decided to end his shift, his phone buzzed. Another ride request. The pickup location flashed on the screen. Margala Hills Viewpoint. That was strange. Nobody requested rides from up there this late, especially in weather like this. For a moment, he hesitated, thumb hovering over the accept button. Then he sighed. "One last ride," he muttered, wiping his windshield as thunder rumbled in the distance. He pressed accept and began the climb up the winding hill road. The rain had eased into a drizzle, and the city lights shimmered faintly below, blurred by the mist. As he drove, his car's tires hissed against the wet road, and every now and then a flash of lightning illuminated the dense trees flanking both sides. When he reached the marked spot, he slowed down, squinting through the rain. At first he saw no one. Then, in the faint glow of his headlights, he noticed a woman standing near the edge of the road, dressed in a white shawl, holding a small purse. She wasn't using an umbrella, yet she seemed completely dry. Saad felt a chill run down his spine, but shook it off. He rolled down the window slightly. "Did you book a ride, ma'am?" he asked. The woman turned her head slowly, her face pale but calm. "Yes," she said softly. Her voice was delicate, almost musical. She opened the back door and slid in without another word. Saad felt the temperature drop instantly, the air inside turning cold enough to mist his breath. He glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She was sitting straight, hands folded in her lap, her shawl neatly wrapped, eyes fixed out the window. "Where to?" he asked, tapping the GPS for the destination. "Sector G6, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Saad nodded, starting the car. For the first few minutes, the ride was silent except for the rhythmic swish of the wipers and the hum of the tires. He tried to make small talk, as he usually did. "The rain's really something tonight," he said with a smile. No response. She didn't even blink. He glanced again through the mirror, and for a second it seemed like she wasn't there at all. The seat appeared empty, just faint outlines in the dim light. He blinked, looked again, and she was sitting there exactly as before. His heart thudded. "You're just tired," he told himself. But deep down he could feel something wasn't right. When the car passed through a particularly dark stretch of road, the streetlights went out for a moment. The only light came from his dashboard and the occasional flash of lightning. In one such flash he caught a clear glimpse of her reflection in the mirror, but what made his stomach twist was that she wasn't looking out the window anymore. She was staring directly at him. Her eyes were wide, dark, and hollow. He jerked his gaze back to the road, nearly swerving into the shoulder. "You okay, sir?" she asked suddenly, her tone polite but unsettling. "Yeah," he stammered. "Just a little slippery road." She smiled faintly. "Be careful. This is where it happened." Her words made his chest tighten. "What happened?" he asked carefully, keeping his eyes forward. "The accident," she said, almost dreamily. "Right here. A long time ago." The rain intensified as thunder cracked across the sky. Saad's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "What accident?" he pressed, hoping to sound casual. "A car lost control," she whispered. "A young couple. They were on their way home. The car skidded and fell off the edge." She turned her gaze back toward the window. "They said the driver died instantly. The woman? She never made it home." Saad's skin prickled with cold sweat. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. "That's awful," he said softly. The woman nodded slowly. "Yes, awful." Her tone was calm, almost detached, as though she were describing someone else's tragedy. As the ride continued, Saad noticed something even stranger. The GPS arrow on his phone wasn't moving. The map was frozen, though the car was clearly in motion. He tried refreshing the app, but it stayed stuck. The destination field, too, had gone blank. He frowned, muttering, "That's odd." The woman leaned forward slightly, her voice low. "Don't worry. I'll tell you where to stop." The way she said it made his stomach turn. Her perfume, a faint scent of roses mixed with something earthy, filled the car, and with every passing minute the temperature dropped further. When he finally reached the city limits, she said softly, "Turn left here." He obeyed. The street she directed him to was narrow and dimly lit, lined with old houses. "Stop by that gate," she said after a moment. He pulled over in front of a rusted iron gate covered in vines. "Are we here?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Yes." She reached into her purse and took out some cash, extending it toward him. Her hand was pale, almost translucent, and her nails had a faint bluish tint. "Keep the change," she said. Saad nodded, trying not to show his unease. She opened the door, stepped out, and walked toward the gate. The rain had stopped, but mist still hung low. He watched as she placed her hand on the gate, and then in the blink of an eye she was gone. Not behind the gate. Not walking away. Just gone, vanished. His heart leapt into his throat. He blinked repeatedly, rubbed his eyes, looked around, nothing. Only silence and the faint rustle of leaves. The only trace she left behind was that lingering rose scent. Trembling, Saad ended the ride and drove away, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. When he finally reached a main road, he pulled over to breathe. His heart was pounding so loud it drowned out the rain. He grabbed his phone to check the fare, but his stomach dropped when he saw that the trip summary was blank. No destination, no fare, no passenger name. It was as if the ride had never happened. Confused and terrified, he scrolled through his trip history. The last entry was from 2 hours earlier. He restarted the app, even the phone, but nothing changed. It was gone. That night he couldn't sleep. The woman's eyes, her voice, that eerie calmness, it replayed in his mind over and over. By morning he convinced himself it had to be exhaustion or maybe some trick of the mind. He went about his day trying to forget, but 2 nights later when he turned on the Uber app again, something made his blood run cold. The app pinged with a ride request from the same pickup point on Margalla Hills. The name read Sarah. His hands froze. It couldn't be. Out of curiosity, or maybe a sense of dread, he accepted it. But this time when he reached the spot, it was empty again. Only rain, fog, and silence. He waited 5 minutes before canceling and turned the car around. Just as he began driving downhill, he caught a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror. A woman sitting in the back seat, her white shawl soaked, staring right at him. He screamed and swerved, the car skidding before stopping on the side of the road. He turned around instantly, but the seat was empty. His breath came in short, panicked bursts. Heart hammering, he stepped out into the rain, looking all around. No one. The mist was thick, swallowing every sound. Then his phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "Thank you for the ride." His hands trembled as he opened the message, but there was no number, no chat history, just those words. He deleted the app the next morning. Days later, out of sheer disbelief, he told a fellow driver about it. The other man went silent for a long moment before saying, "You're not the first to pick her up. They say a woman died on that road in a car accident years ago. Every few months, someone gets a ride request from her account. Always from that spot." Saad didn't know what to say. The other driver continued. "Some people say she's still trying to get home. Others say she's looking for the driver who caused the crash." Since that night, Saad never accepted rides near the hills. And even now, sometimes, when he drives late at night and glances at his rearview mirror, he swears he sees a faint reflection. A woman sitting quietly in the back seat, her pale face expressionless, her shawl perfectly dry despite the rain. He looks again and she's gone. But her perfume lingers. Roses and something else. Something old, cold, and sorrowful. And every time his phone pings with a new ride request from Margalla Hills, he simply stares at the screen for a long moment before turning the phone off, whispering a prayer and driving home in silence. 4. The driver's last trip at midnight. It was just past midnight when Rashid, a hard-working Uber driver in Karachi, received what would unknowingly become his final ride. He had been on the road for nearly 12 hours, weary but determined to make a little more before heading home to his small apartment in Sadar. The city was quieter than usual that night, wrapped in an eerie stillness broken only by the distant hum of rickshaws and the occasional bark of stray dogs. The air felt heavy and even the usual sea breeze seemed to have vanished. When his phone buzzed with a new ride request, the name read Faraz with a pickup near the old railway quarters. an area Rashid usually avoided after dark. He hesitated for a moment, thumb hovering over the accept button, then sighed. One last ride, he whispered to himself, then home. He pressed accept, turned the ignition, and drove off into the maze of narrow lanes that led to the old quarter. The streetlights flickered like dying candles as he approached the pickup point, and the shadows of trees swayed eerily across the road. He slowed down near a dilapidated building that looked long abandoned. Must be the wrong spot, he thought, checking his phone again. But before he could call the passenger, the rear door clicked open. Rashid turned around quickly and froze. A man in his mid-30s slid silently into the back seat. He was tall and thin, dressed neatly in a black suit that seemed oddly out of place for that part of town. His face was pale, and his eyes were hidden behind dark glasses even though it was the middle of the night. "Faraz?" Rashid asked, his voice unsteady. The man nodded once without a word. "Where to, sir?" Rashid continued, forcing a polite tone. "Liari," the man said softly, his voice low and almost hollow, like it came from somewhere far away. Rashid frowned slightly. It wasn't common for well-dressed men to request rides to Liari at that hour. Still, he nodded, started the car, and merged onto the main road. The man sat perfectly still, hands resting on his knees, staring out the window into the dark. The only sound was the steady hum of the car engine and the faint patter of drizzle beginning to fall. After a few minutes, Rashid tried to make small talk to ease the tension. "Long night, sir?" he asked. The man didn't respond. Rashid glanced at him through the rearview mirror and noticed something strange. There was no reflection. His heart skipped a beat. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, and looked again. This time the faint outline of the man appeared, distorted and blurry. "It's just the bad lighting," he told himself, gripping the wheel tighter. They drove on in silence. The streets grew emptier the deeper they went. The drizzle turned into steady rain, tapping rhythmically on the roof. Every now and then the man would mumble something under his breath, words too soft for Rashid to catch. When they passed the old cinema near Moripur Road, the man suddenly said, "Turn left." Rashid checked the GPS. It showed a straight route. "Sir, the map says to go straight," he replied cautiously. "Turn left," the man repeated, his tone firmer now, still calm but carrying an unspoken authority that made Rashid obey without question. The car entered a narrow lane lined with crumbling walls and faded graffiti. The rain had stopped, but the air felt thicker somehow, almost suffocating. Rashid's eyes darted between the road and the mirror, trying not to stare but unable to ignore the unnerving stillness of his passenger. "How long have you been driving?" the man asked suddenly, his voice low. The question startled Rashid, breaking the suffocating silence. About 3 years, he answered, forcing a laugh. "It's not easy, but it pays the bills." "Do you ever wonder," the man murmured, "who the people in your back seat really are?" Rashid chuckled nervously. "Sometimes, sir. You meet all kinds, students, doctors, travelers, even celebrities once." "And ghosts?" the man asked, his tone now eerily calm. Rashid froze. "Excuse me?" he stammered, turning slightly. But the man was looking straight ahead, expression unreadable. The tension in the car became unbearable. Rashid's palms were slick with sweat, his breath shallow. He tried to laugh it off. "That's a good one, sir," he said weakly. The man tilted his head slightly. "Do you believe in ghosts, Rashid?" The sound of his name made Rashid's blood run cold. He hadn't introduced himself. "How do you—" he began, but the man interrupted. "You've been driving too long tonight. You should rest after this trip." Rashid swallowed hard, his heart thudding in his chest. "Yes, sir," he whispered. They drove in silence for several minutes until the man said, "Stop here." Rashid slowed down, scanning the surroundings. They were in an abandoned part of Liari. Empty streets, broken streetlights, old houses with shuttered windows. "Are you sure, sir?" "This place looks deserted," Rashid said, glancing back nervously. The man smiled faintly, the corners of his lips curving upward just enough to make Rashid's skin crawl. "This is where it ends," he said softly. Rashid hesitated but pulled over. The man reached into his coat pocket and took out a few old rupee notes, yellowed and torn at the edges. He placed them gently on the front seat. "Thank you for the ride," he said. His voice had softened, but there was a strange sadness in it now, like a farewell. Before Rashid could respond, the man opened the door and stepped out. He walked toward a narrow alley and vanished into the shadows. Rashid exhaled deeply, relief flooding through him. He looked at the money on the seat, old notes no longer in circulation. Weird, he muttered. He put the car in gear and started driving back toward the main road. But a few minutes later, he heard the sound of the back door closing softly. His stomach dropped. He looked at the mirror. There he was. The man was sitting in the back seat again, dripping wet this time, staring straight ahead. How did you? Rashid's voice broke. You missed the turn, the man said quietly, his expression unchanged. Rashid's heart pounded. Sir, please, keep driving, the man said, his voice suddenly cold and commanding. Rashid gripped the wheel tightly, too afraid to disobey. The road ahead was dark, endless. The street lights flickered and died as they passed. The temperature inside the car plummeted. His breath fogged up the windshield and the smell of damp earth filled the air. Do you know where we're going? The man asked softly. Rashid didn't answer. Home, the man continued. We're going home. The words echoed in Rashid's mind, each syllable heavy with dread. Then, without warning, the man leaned forward, his reflection finally clear in the mirror. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, and blood trickled slowly from the corner of his mouth. Rashid screamed, losing control of the steering wheel. The car skidded, spun wildly, and crashed into a tree with a sickening thud. The airbags deployed, smoke filled the air, and everything went black. When the police arrived hours later, they found the car totaled. Rashid was dead, his hands still gripping the wheel, eyes wide open in terror. The passenger seat was empty. The investigators noted that the car's GPS showed the trip ending at exactly midnight. The strange part? The ride had started at 11:59 p.m. and lasted 1 minute. No distance recorded. They found the old rupee notes on the dashboard, damp but intact. There was no record of any passenger named Faraz in the Uber database. The driver's phone was still connected, the app frozen on a blank screen. Rumors spread quickly among local drivers. Some said Rashid had been cursed for picking up a lost spirit. Others whispered that the man he drove had died years ago in a car crash on the same road, still trying to find his way home. A few weeks later, another driver received a ride request from the same name, Faraz, pickup near the old railway quarters, destination Eerie. He declined instantly, but the next night a different driver accepted. He never returned either. The company marked both accounts as inactive, but drivers in Karachi still talk about it in hushed tones. The midnight ride, the man in the black suit, the ghost who pays in old money. Some even claim that on quiet, rainy nights, if you pass through Eerie around midnight, you might see a black car parked near a broken tree, headlights dim, engine still humming. Inside sits a man, eyes open, staring at the mirror, waiting for a passenger who never really left. And sometimes when the wind blows just right, if you listen closely, you can hear a faint voice from the empty back seat whispering, "Keep driving."